Welcome to Dr. Khadar Lifestyle.
Dr. Khadar ji. I'll briefly introduce you, Dr. Khadar. Dr. Khadar ji is a native of Kadapa district from Andhra Pradesh, working relentlessly in reviving Siridhanya, also known as positive millets, for the last 20 years. He has completed his MS from Regional Institute of Education, Mysuru, and went for his PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. And he married his classmate Usha and pursued a postdoctoral research fellowship in environmental science from Beaverton, Oregon in USA. His research involved deactivating deadly chemical substances as dioxin at a time when food was being rapidly commercialized. After his postdoc, he has worked as a food scientist in the Central Food Technology Research Institute at Mysore. Later, he worked at DuPont in Wilmington in US for 5 years, and later decided to return back to country and strive towards making a healthier society in his own country. And since then, he has been working very hard to revive 5 different types of millets that were fast disappearing. And he also discovered the healing properties present in them could cure even deadly diseases. And he named these 5 millets as Siridhanya. He propounded a method called Kadu Krishi, also known as jungle farming, to make this popular. And he has been treating his patients for their diseases by recommending the consumption of Siridhanya and different plant or tree leaf decoctions. And he is of a firm opinion that paddy, rice, wheat, milk, non-veg, ultimately the eating habits, and genetically modified crops, chemical fertilizers, and other unnatural substances are harmful for the environment and for the people consuming them. So with this, I would like to request Dr. Kwadawali to take over, sir.
Yes. Thank you. It's been, there are 2-3 aspects that we need to focus upon. I would not take much time. We are trying to connect 3-4 concepts together: climate change, spirituality, health, food. And if possible, I would like to actually connect it to the younger generation. See, most of us think of eating food, health like this. The most important aspect of food is you have to say enough at certain point of time. Otherwise, food becomes poison for you. Even if you eat the best food, the so-called sattvic food, or only vegetables, only fruits, only this, only that, everything. So fundamentally, the spirituality actually comes from saying enough. Oh, fruits are good. You cannot go on eating. The earlier speakers said you have to eat some calculated amount, 400 or 500 or something like that. Anything excess leads to imbalance. So fundamentally, God has inherently kept, and we have not been observing this. In everything and any aspect of existence, there is what is called enough. So fundamentally, everyone has to be informed, and their focus has to be directed from childhood, that we need to involve every conscious being of this planet to this particular point that we have to say enough. This much is enough for you. And I'll give you an example in biochemical reactions. When you eat something, ultimately the objective is to convert it into glucose, and the glucose has to be burnt in each and every cell to produce carbon dioxide and energy. Now imagine the mitochondria keeps on burning the glucose, and eventually that leads to early old age. When the oxidative stress in a cell increases, it becomes old. So it also has to have a particular quota of doing it. So that's why people who overwork, overdo things tend to become sick and old soon. So everything has to be in a balance. So even if it is the best thing available, without producing any toxic morbid waste. Of course, always good things produce toxic morbid waste. Just producing energy gives you carbon dioxide out. And carbon dioxide, if you don't exhale, you will die. And that is another example. So you cannot say, I want to have more energy and then pump up with the adrenals, this and that. You are building up the oxidative stress. So even doing good works, you got to take rest. You got to slow down. So there is that inherent inbuilt limitation for every process in nature. And that is what is called enough. So if we do not train our brains consciously that this is enough, and that is actually the first step of spirituality. That is the first step of spirituality. And what is the spirituality? Most often we are confusing it with of late present day spiritualities. Go inside, meditate, you have to meet God, you have to get nirvana. All these kinds of things are uploaded into the consciousness of people. And then what? After getting nirvana, after you see God, or what? After you, what next? Including the so-called Buddha, after having got nirvana, he opened his eyes. And then, you know what he first said? Let's cook something and eat. So that means he didn't eat for a long time. And he found nirvana. And then after he gets up, see, even the so-called nirvana, finding spirituality has to have something like enough. So it's always a cyclic thing that we need to find. So there is limited things. Even this nirvana has to be limited. You cannot be simply floating in air and say, I'm nirvana, and that's it. After that, you have to come back. You have to come back and then eat. So not eating also has to be balanced. So the spirituality is not in the spirits. It is very well rooted in the mundane things. So without being mundane, there is no spirituality. So I'm trying to establish the necessity of the mundane world, materialistic domain, because most of the time the spiritual fellows, including all the spiritual fellows, tend to negate or, oh, these are material things, you have to be about this. No, there is nothing like that. You got to have the balance. So the spirituality doesn't mean you going beyond material domain. Even if you go beyond and on, again you have to come back to the material domain. So it is understanding. The focus is saying enough. Enough of anything. It doesn't matter whether it is spirituality, food, action, thoughts. Being in balance is the most important thing, is what is called spirituality. So for that, the fundamental first step is to say enough. And if we don't have this ingrained, and it has to be taught to everyone. So I'm trying to communicate to people that this youth has to be taught. And of course, with this Western thought process taking over all the world, we have lost this. And our Sanatana Dharma has been maintaining that we need to have Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. Why the hell we should have all Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu? No, not necessary. I am spiritually gone and then I am there outside. So why should we bother about Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu? It's because Even if you find nirvana, you got to come back. And then you want to make sure others are also trying to reach in that particular domain, because it is this balance we have to find. So that's how all these so-called spiritually elevated souls have come back and try to again educate, do things. But now what we have done is we have stopped this spiritual processes being into the minds of people. And only after 50 or 60, I have now become old, I will say Ramakrishna, and I will find Nirvana, or I will find Buddhism, I will find Jainism, I will find Brahmakumari, I will go this way, that way. No, that's what has actually been practiced right now. That's because we have not been talking about spirituality from the kids, from the younger generation. And everyone, there is need for being spiritual. And rightly pointed out by the earlier speakers, the food has been actually the main culprit in the last 50 to 100 years, which I have been talking about is industrial food. The food becoming industrial, centrally prepared, centrally processed, centrally produced. All this is because they are commercializing the food, corporatizing the food. And that is the result that all over the world, everyone is eating few items only, like rice, wheat, milk, sugar, and meat products. And it has happened in the name of Green Revolution, White Revolution. Now we are in midst of Pink Revolution, and which these corporates are already with the next color revolution called Blue Revolution. And these revolutions are aided by the so-called scientific I don't want to use the word scientific discoveries, not inventions. So these so-called scientific discoveries in the last 50 to 100 years in the realm of physical sciences as well as so-called biological sciences have been the culprit. And we have hastened the process of producing food in large quantities, and we cannot create food, even if it is GM food, this food, that food. Everything has to be only a transformation of the energy and the resources available on this planet as a whole. So we are only hastening the process of one thing becoming to the other, and hence adulterating, because this micro and macro balances are disturbed when you do one thing in larger numbers or larger quantities. We don't need food in such large quantities, and that is the problem. So because we have lost saying enough. And that's the reason why I said everyone has to be taught from the school days, enough for me. So when you start saying enough, only then things fall in place. So if we do not teach young people saying enough, then comes the question of wrong food, right food, sick, being sick, all diseases, all that. Then we are talking how to cure the diseases, how to do this, how to do that. So in first place, the whole humanity has lost touch with the basic concept of spirituality, and that is saying enough. So it is my fundamental belief, deep felt belief, both emotionally, spiritually, and logically and scientifically, that human race, unless embarks upon this huge project of educating the future generations, that is, of course, youth. So spirituality is not meant for only the white-haired fellows or 60 years or 70 years or restricted to some ashramas and then kind of cult following or kind of religious, Hindu religion, Tamil religion, Telugu religion, Christian religion. All these divisions do not get us anywhere. So the essence of spirituality is saying enough, because we are part of nature. We are very small nuts and bolts of this nature, and we need to be acting as one, and that only, not beyond that. And so again here, to say enough is Very, very important. So this is my concept of spirituality, because at the end of all spiritual journeys, everyone has to come back to this planet. Everyone has to come back to this mundane world, material domain. And of course, spirituality is non-material domain. It is the existence of non-material domain in transcribing into material domain. So in this transcription, translation, and conversions, we are creating toxic, morbid waste because we have not been applying this fundamental principle of spirituality. So it's a lack of spirituality has caused the problems of identifying wrong food or preparing food in a wrong procedures, which has created macro imbalance on this planet Earth. Like the food choices we have made, rice, wheat, meat, sugar, all these things in an exorbitant way consume water and soil in large quantities. And we are consuming, see, when we consume rice, we are not consuming rice. We are consuming 8,000 liters of water to prepare 1 kilo of rice. And so much soil becoming toxic because to produce that much rice. So we need to understand this inner, deeper transformation and transitions and breaking the water cycle, breaking the soil cycle, breaking the reverse flow, building dams. So all these are involved. If we do not understand all these processes causing micro balance and macro balance into imbalances. And these macro and micro imbalances are the ones translating into microbial imbalance in our tummies, glucose imbalance in our blood, hormonal imbalance in the total system. And these three imbalances have been the cause of our diseases in the last 100 years. And so the least amount of utilization of the plant or earth resources should be the means and methods of producing our food. So what is the least, even beyond fruits and vegetables, beyond vegetables is the most and the least consuming processes is the millets. The millets consume the least amount of earth's resources. The soil, even if it is completely barren, we can produce millets. Even if we have no rains, almost 1 or 2 rains, and just water content in the atmosphere is good enough to produce kodo millet or barnyard millet or little millet. So it is saying enough as a whole human race, choosing the right food. And once we eat this food, the imbalances that we have created in the human race, in form of cancer, in form of diabetes, in form of all these things. So beyond even vegetables, beyond even fruits, the least consuming is this millet food. So once you get into the millets, we have been able to show empirically thousands and thousands of people getting well with the use of this. So the balance that we have created, macro imbalance because of growing rice, wheat, sugar cane, milk, and meat can be balanced just in a matter of, according to my calculation, theoretical calculation, in 2.5 years. All the disturbances we have created. So it is this spiritual, fundamental first step that has the resourceful solution of the problem of climate change that is actually threatening the existence of future generations on this planet. Sadly, it's not just the human race that is being wiped out. We have already wiped out 68% of fauna and flora on this planet, including the oceans. So, high time we fundamentally focus this issue and start communicating to the younger generations, because these are all white-haired fellows sitting, climate change, seminars, webinars, do not get us anywhere. So we need to actually fundamentally exercise our energies to direct the attention and focus of the younger generations in this domain, in this direction, to make it into an action plan. Because spirituality always is not sitting and meditating. It has to, the thoughts have to be converted into action. As I have always been mentioning, the non-spiritual material domain is very important. And that non-spiritual material domain is the platform for action. And the thoughts, spirituality, other domain of non-materialistic has to find itself transcribed into this material domain through our actions. So it is the balance of this thought and action, and many dimensions put together. So it's not working in one department, one compartment, one apartment. These are all things the way we have been learning in the last 50, 60 years based on this factory food corporate culture. Our thoughts have been divided, our actions have been divided. So a cogent, synchronized, symbiotic actions have to be developed, and we all need to focus our energies. How do we develop, including curricular activities, such that we translate these thought processes, which are highly spiritual, highly thought-provoking, and highly action-oriented. So it's all in together as a holistic thing we need to think about. And I hope I have another 3 or 4 minutes to my credit right now. So I would like to end up my session. I have not gone into details as to how to do it, what to do it, how not to do it. That may require a longer session. And it is actually for the august audience that I have been trying to communicate that the thought processes have to be amalgamated, synthesized, synchronized, and then we need to take a collective action so that we all can be of benefit for the future younger generations. Thank you. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity. So healing people is a small issue here. It is healing the planet, healing the dented spirituality of the present day modern human living. That is the higher goal of this webinar. And I have been trying to communicate both content and the thought and procedural ways that to be enacted in the coming future days. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe our channel, Dr. Khadar Lifestyle. Press the below bell icon to get notifications.